It didn't
This
give
is
me
an
the
awkward silence.
it didn't give me the recording in progress. I was waiting for it to make a joke, and it didn't give it to me.
It gave it to me. It
Oh, it
doesn't.
didn't give it
It
to
doesn't need
me.
to ask for your consent to record.
Oh man, that's why I that disappoints me. I was so ready for the first time in a long time to hear the recording in progress. That's disappointing. Anyways, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players Podcast. We are back for MLS History Retold, where today we go back in time to relive some great stories, including how one player was given an MLS contract by winning what is basically a reality TV show, and another player who scored the first goal in his club's history, leading to some celebratory projectiles being sent onto the pitch. My name's Andrew, joined by my good buddy Connor, and this is MLS History Retold. Connor, we're finally moving on in the number of teams that we can pick from. We've got a new one here today for me. You might have a new one here as well. I don't know what you're pulling out, but this is the first time I've broken this scarf out for MLS History Retold because it's our first time in the league.
Mine is a big stretch today because I didn't have any scarves that would match what I needed.
Like
So,
a Grace stretch.
you say a grace stretch?
Like a Grace stretch, because Grace has the biggest stretches.
Then yes, it is like a
Yeah.
grace stretch. Maybe not a grace stretch. I remember you had some like OKC scarf for one episode. That was a grace stretch.
That was a great stretch. A
No,
great
no,
grace
no, no. That's a
stretch.
grace stretch.
I know. It was a great Grace
No, 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 no.
stretch.
You clearly your hearing is off. But should we just get into the scarves then?
Yeah, what do you got?
All right. So I'm not gonna say what mine's related to yet. You'll have to listen to the story and figure it out. But it's a little thing at the end because unfortunately I didn't have any scarves for the main character of this episode. But I've got the Dallas scarf.
Is that the scarf? Do we have the same scarf?
I wouldn't be surprised.
I think we do.
I mean, it's a cheap Dallas scarf, so
Yeah.
we probably both have it.
Yeah, it looks pretty close. I won't give mine away. I won't give away who the players are or anything, but we'll give away the team. My least favorite scarf in the collection, because
Yikes.
I can only
Shots
show
fired.
this. Well, it's not the team, it's the scarf. I think the scarf is boring. I mean, look at it. If I showed you this, what do you think? Nothing. Oh, don't worry. Let me flip it around.
A maple leaf.
Great. So it's somewhere in the great country of Canada.
Yeah, so that narrows
Maybe.
it down to 3 teams.
Does it? What if it's a Canadian Soccer League scarf?
Why would you have it out for this episode?
Why
Is
not?
this Canadian Premier League retold? No,
It might
it's
be.
not.
Oh man, spin-off series.
Don't you
Spin-off
start.
series.
Don't you start. I don't even know
Uh,
if I can name one team in the Canadian Premier League.
the Ottawa Fury? What? The Halifax Wanderers?
The what? That sounds like
Pacific
an English team.
FC? You got to get your ball knowledge up, bro. I'm bringing CPL teams into next tic tac toe episode. So
Oh God, please
watch
don't.
out for yourself.
Please don't.
All righty. I believe you start us off here, so I'm gonna hit the little mute button and let you tell us a story about Sueño MLS.
Yes, yes. First time in a while that I got to start one off. And as Andrew mentioned, we're going to be talking about Sueño MLS, uh, focused mainly on a one Jorge Villafaña. And so, source for this one used Wikipedia and an article by John Arnold called "Living the Dream: How Sueño MLS Launched Jorge Villafaña's Fairy Tale Career." Fantastic article, by the way. Highly recommend checking it out. So, if you're new to following MLS, like me, you might be asking yourself, what is Sueño MLS? Well, let me tell you what I've learned. Sueño MLS is a competition broadcast on TV for MLS to scout for new talent, mainly in the Latin American community throughout the US. Each season of the show, tryouts were held in 3 selected cities to see who could win the competition, and in turn, a place on an MLS academy. Each city will select 5 outfield players and 1 goalkeeper as the winners, in quotes, for each city. These 18 players will then meet up and train together before taking on an MLS Academy team to determine the ultimate winner of the competition. As mentioned before, the winner will get a place in an MLS Academy. The competition began in 2007, and wouldn't you know it, a 17-year-old Jorge Villafaña, known as Jorge Flores at that time, was part of the tryouts. However, according to John's article, Villafaña didn't even really want to go to the tryout, but was pushed into doing it by his mother and uncle. He still had a bit of a sour taste for tryouts after he'd tried out for Chivas' academy the year prior but was rejected. And that wasn't the only thing that had almost stopped him from joining the competition. He had missed the registration, so he had to wait and hope that there was a no-show amongst the registered players. And sure enough, there was, and he got to join. After a few days, the 2,000 players trying out were cut down to 60. Then a week after that, it was cut down to 24, who were then allowed to train alongside Chivas USA's U19 squad. After 2 weeks of that training, there was only one player left, deemed to be the winner of the competition. Since you already know the result of the competition, you obviously know that Villafaña won. However, those following the competition on TV did not. The grand winner was to be announced on Univision in Miami. Villafaña stood on the show stage with a lucha libre mask covering his face and a Chivas USA jersey on. The grand reveal came as he removed the mask to reveal that Jorge Villafaña was the first ever winner of Sueño MLS, meaning that he would get a spot on the Chivas USA Academy. Villafaña was quoted as saying that if it weren't for Sueño MLS, he likely would have gone to college and never played professionally, which is crazy to think about looking back at how successful he was in his career. Speaking of his career, I recommend checking out John's article to get some great details, but I'll give a quick recap. Villafaña quickly made it into the Chivas USA senior squad and at one point was their longest tenured player. He was traded to the Portland Timbers after the 2013 season, where he would play 52 games across 2 seasons while winning MLS Cup in 2015. After, he would be sold to Santos Laguna in Liga MX for just under $1 million. That was followed up by another stint with Portland from 2018 to 2020 before he was traded to the LA Galaxy ahead of the 2021 season. He made 20 appearances for the U.S. national team and helped the side win the Gold Cup in 2017. Safe to say, a very successful career, which was so close on multiple occasions to never happening. Sueño MLS would continue for many more years after Villafaña's win in its first year. In the following season, Rogelio Funes Mori, the former River Plate and Benfica striker, currently on Monterrey, was the winner of the competition, earning him a spot in the FC Dallas Academy. Wink, wink, that's the scarf. His twin brother, Ramiro Funes Mori, was a finalist that season as well. However, that would be the end of the notable winners of the competition, as the remaining winners were not able to find success at the top level like the previous winners, at least not yet. Some of them are still pretty young. The show made a long run before ending in 2016, but that was, of course, before it helped to jumpstart the fantastic career of Jorge Villafaña.
That was the most thing I was curious about was what happened after him, because you always hear like he was the first one, but you never know who came after him. And both Funes Mori's brothers, one who is like an absolute star for his country and his club, and the other one who was playing on the best club in Europe at one time, both came out of that competition. That's pretty sick.
Yeah, it kind of fell off after that, though. I mean, I was able to find the Wikipedia page for Sueño MLS, and after Funes Mori won in the year after, nobody else, no other winners across goalkeepers or outfield players even had a Wikipedia page. So I take that as they haven't panned out. But I also found their Twitter, and they haven't had a tweet since like 2017, which makes sense because they, I think, stopped in like 2016. But they were posting about the person who won it at the end there, and I think that guy is still in college at the moment. So I think there's still potential. There's still potential for him to pan out. So I don't want to rule anything out yet. But it did at the moment at least drop off pretty heavily after Funes Mori, because the first 2 years you're like, you set the standard high. I mean, Villafaña and Funes Mori. I mean, those are two bangers coming out of there right off the bat.
I got to tell you, man, this would be a really good thing to start back up. The anti-MLS crowd doesn't have a ton of like leadway to stand on, like in terms of what they have gripes about. The lack of like the amount of people that we need to find and the difficult task of having to find it especially in high Latin American areas and areas of those natures. That is that's one really cool way to do it. And I'm not just saying stick to just that area. I mean, move it around the country every year or whatever. But I think that'd be a really cool thing to bring back because again, it's expensive to play football here. It just is. It's a terrible part of the game. It's not a secret to anybody that the pay to play model sucks. But the unique and clever ways to go about it, that's one really cool way to do it, I think. As long as, it didn't cost them like, $2,000 to sign up for the registration. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it's got to be free, right? Because why else would you let Villafana play then? Because then that's not really fair to the others who had to they had to pay $2,000 and then Villafana just gets to walk on because somebody no showed. Then I don't know, but I would hope it's free. I mean, hopefully it's just travel costs that they have to pay for. But
Well, you say that now it sparks my interest a little bit because 2016 was right about the time that academies started becoming a thing. So you say that whole thing about equality and fairness, right? It wouldn't be fair for somebody to pay to go through the entire academy system just for this other guy to walk on because he wanted to want to try out, right? So that's a super interesting point. I'm really interested to dive deeper into that as we go on. Yeah,
that's fair.
I like that. I like that a lot. Didn't necessarily win a popularity contest by any means, but a good friend of my head coach, Danny Dichio, got himself the opportunity of a lifetime back in 2007. Give me a
Is that the
grade.
transition?
Yeah, give me a grade. How's that?
Well, I don't know who Danny Dichio is.
Oh, what? Then it's a 10 out of 10 because it now you're like, oh man, who is this guy? I wonder what his opportunity was, right?
Well, I mean, you've definitely sparked the curiosity.
There it is, baby. I've done my job. So let me go and take you back before the days of dominance, the treble winning sides, the international superstars. Before all of that, Toronto FC, they were really bad. Like, really bad. Joining the league in 2007 as the league's 13th team in the Eastern Conference. They ended up in the Eastern Conference, but overall they were the 13th team. They were one of the first teams to actually play in their own soccer-specific stadium in their expansion. Funny enough, as soon as they came in, BMO Field was erected, and they were playing in it from day one. Fantastic. All of this put together, hopes were really high for Canada's first involvement in the U.S. soccer landscape. A little bit of a preamble because I think it's pretty funny. Before the season kicked off, they took part in the Carolina Challenge Cup. They played against Houston in the first game and lost. And then they played one other MLS side and the Charleston Battery. That other MLS side they beat, earning their first ever win against an MLS side. Connor, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Can you guess which team that was?
Yeah. Was it Red Bull?
It absolutely was the New York Red Bull, who once again
so Metro.
Have given a team or a player their first something. So Toronto FC got their first ever win against the New York Red Bulls in 2007 in the preseason. I just thought that was funny because there's a little trend that we've been noticing as we go through MLS history. Super funny, super fun. But yes, they did go on to beat the Charleston Battery before starting the MLS season, meaning that they were 2 wins on the bounce getting into the regular season starting. And that means that they had a ton of hope entering the season. And to be fair, they had a really decent team to do it. I looked up their roster. MLS experienced coach Mo Johnston was leading this Toronto team. Canadian international Greg Sutton at 29 years old stood between the sticks. And they had experience all over the park. Kevin Goldthwait from Houston, Tyrone Marshall and Paulo Nagamura from LA, Todd Dunovit, Marvell Wynn, and Edson Buttle, all from RBNY, along with the additions of Aleko Eskandarian, Jeff Cunningham, and Maurice Adu from the draft. And that was just the local talent. They also went overseas and partnered that MLS experience with players from Norwich, which included Carl Robinson, Southampton, which included Jim Brennan, Sunderland, which was Andy Walsh, Mainz, which was Red Bull killer Connor Casey. And the main point of our story, Danny Dichio, came from Preston North End. You look at this group and the way that they built their team, and if we were looking at it in 2023, you're thinking Bit of MLS experience, bit of overseas experience. This is a good combination. This is going to be a good start to the year. They're not going to miss a beat. And then the season kicked off. It's kind of hard to describe exactly how awful this team was. So we're just going to go game by game. In game one, they took on Chivas USA on the road. It was a difficult challenge, and it saw them lose 2-0 with Ante Razov and a young Sasha Kleshin scoring late in each half to secure 3 points. No big deal. Got to get your feet wet somehow. We move on to game two, which was also on the road versus a New England Revolution side that lost MLS Cup the year before on penalties. The likes of Taylor Twellman would get a brace in the first 20 minutes, with Shalry Joseph and Andy Dorman scoring in the second half to cap off a 4-0 beatdown. Clearly, game three can't be much worse, right? They would head over to play the KC Wizards, who finished second to last the year before, which should have been a much easier test for this expansion side. That thought, however, was quickly erased when Eddie Johnson scored 5 minutes into the game. Harry Zavanin and Yura Mosisian, a young Yura Mosisian, would score 2 goals to make it 3-0 and give 3 more points to a team that wasn't TFC. And I think you're noticing a trend here. Game 4, once again, a matchup with the KC Wizards, but this time at home for the first time since joining the league. 20,000 fans sold out the stadium, not only to watch the team at home for the first time ever, but hopefully to see them score their first MLS goal. They had gone 270 minutes without a goal. 20,000 fans came, sang, and supported for 90 minutes and left empty-handed as an 81st minute Eddie Johnson goal capped off the 1-0 loss for Toronto and marking 360 MLS minutes without a goal. As the final whistle blew, fans sang out onto the players on the field, "All we want is a goal." 360 minutes, 0 goals. Truly, I can't think of a worse start to a year. Even like the crazy bad FCC years had some goals involved. No matter the successes or failures of this club, however, the show must go on. And next up, the Chicago Fire. Back home at BMO Field, I found an article written by Richard Whittle, which recalls the weather being sunny, but not too hot and not too warm. And there was a special promotion on the day. Bank of Montreal, why Montreal, I have no idea, being in Toronto, but the Bank of Montreal gave out complimentary seat cushions to all fans on the day. Richard and 20,000 plus fans had soft seats to watch their team go at it once again. At this moment, Danny Dichio actually would get his first start, being that he was coming from overseas. He got a weird start to the year, and he missed the first 4 games. He was interviewed about the day and said he remembered it being a beautiful day, remembering the anticipation of it all. It's possibly going to be our first win, our first goal, that we could get something in front of a raucous crowd that were really eager to put TFC on the map. There was something strange in the air that day. I didn't have family at the game. We were still busy moving all our stuff, packing up the house in England. They were coming out later in the week, so I didn't have any family or friends in the stadium. I do remember, though, that the group as a whole were pretty nervous, and even the staff. They were a little bit apprehensive and anxious about getting the first win and the first goal. From that, you knew that this game was going to be different, and it was. The play was flowing, the players were creating chances, and the fans in the stadium could tell that day that after 360 minutes, TFC were going to get their first goal. And 24 minutes into that game, the fans got their wish. Marvell Wynn served a short ball into Edson Buttle, who's back to goal in the box. His first touch falls to Maurice Adu, who plays it right back into Adu, striding into the box. He squares up, lays a ball back into a wide-open Danny Dichio, who taps past the keeper into the net for Toronto FC's first ever MLS goal, 384 minutes into their existence. The crowd went ballistic. The announcer on the call gave a memorable line that I really want to repeat here. Minute 24, May 12th, Danny Dichio, goal number 1, Toronto, Bedlam in Canada. And it matched perfectly to what was being seen in the shot. And then the camera cut wide, and it happened. One person started it and everybody else followed. But from every area on the pitch, the complimentary seat cushions came flying down onto the pitch in jubilation. Dichio noted, for the players on the field, we were still getting over the fact that we actually scored a goal, finally. I mean, we've been working on crossing and finishing and all kinds of shooting drills, just lots of repetitions, forward, goal, all week. And for us to finally put the ball in the net, it was a relief. And then to have the delay, the eruption of the fans throwing not only seat cushions, but there was all kind of paper being thrown, cups thrown on, streamers, all of it. You kind of step back and just for a moment say, wow, this is a really unique moment, not just in my career, but also in the history of the club and the players that were on the field that day. Even the Chicago players were a little bit taken aback by what was going on. I spoke to a couple of them afterwards, guys that have come to our club like Chad Barrett or the likes of Jim Curtin, who was playing that day and now coaches for Philly, who said he'd never been involved in an environment or atmosphere like that in his career. The game would eventually be paused so that the pitch could be cleared of the cushions and all the other debris, but TFC would not only score their first goal, but also get their first win on a 3-1 result against the Fire at home. And what better way to celebrate your first goal for your new club? Of course, it's getting sent off 20 minutes later for getting into a fight with another player right before halftime. When asked about the moment and if it was lost on him in the middle of the game, he responds, no, not at all. I wasn't a massive goal scorer throughout my career. I was mainly a guy that set people up, assisted, notched the odd goal, held the ball up. I've scored important goals in different stadiums, but to score a goal like that, which wasn't my most exquisite goal, it was bundled in really. It was one of the most important goals in my career because of the value of it and the way we still talk about it. And the fans continue to sing songs because it's such an important mark. Not just because it was me. I'm still very fortuitous that it was. It was just me being in the right place. But to have the fans understand how much the goal meant to them as a club and putting us on the map. And then we scored that first goal, that we actually achieved it as a team. It meant more than anything. While not many will remember the story of the first TFC goal, those in attendance for the Danny Dichio goal know that they saw history that day. A goal that will go down in the memory bank right next to every mesmerizing win and agonizing loss. But you can be sure that every Canadian championship, every treble, everything in between, it all started with a Danny Dichio goal and 20,000 flying seat cushions.
So I've got two things. So I know you had mentioned at some point about Bank of Montreal. So if I don't have this mistaken, I do believe Bank of Montreal is BMO, hence why they did the sponsorship.
Sense.
Yeah.
Oh,
because
look at you being smart.
I looked it up before because I know that I think at the moment they sponsor 2 fields in MLS.
They do. They sponsor LAFC as well.
Yeah. So I was curious about it. I was like, oh, I wonder what BMO stands for. The other thing is a question for you. I think you'll have the answer to it. At this point with Toronto, are they the first Canadian team in MLS? Did Montreal and Vancouver not exist yet?
Correct. They were the first team in. Vancouver joined a couple years later, and then Montreal with them at the same time.
So then maybe that's why Bank of Montreal sponsored them, just considering they were the first. But I imagine if like Montreal and Toronto joined at the same time, you got to sponsor Montreal over Toronto, right?
Right. Well, that's what it did because there's such a big rivalry between the two. I'm like, why? It doesn't make sense. But they still sponsor the stadium, so
maybe maybe it's just commitment at this point.
Any of our Canadian listeners, please let us know because I don't quite understand it, but I don't quite care either. So it doesn't bother me. Yeah, some really cool stories there. I mean, these are the ones that you go back and when you look at, everybody who loves the Europeans are always like, oh, look at this first goal for this first player, like the Wayne Rooney goal they play on repeat after every single Premier League game. It's like, okay, we get it. He scored a goal for Everton and Everton the best, whatever. But nobody talks about the Dichio goal and the seat cushion. That's the stuff that we should be talking about, right? That's the stuff we should be pushing in front of everybody because that's where it starts. Those moments are what this series is about. So if you enjoyed that story, if you enjoy these stories that we keep telling you, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you know when the next one goes out. Connor is always so good at knowing which one's next. So I know he's got it right on the tip of his tongue.
I do, actually.
Nice.
Next up, we are going to be talking about Ben Olsen's hat trick versus RBNY.
No, we're
That
not. We're skipping that.
that one's definitely gonna be a great one to listen to.
We're skipping that.
I can't wait. And you're talking about that one. And we are going to be talking about Ozzie Alonso coming to the Seattle Sounders.
Ooh, I may need to move things around because I've
No,
got
no,
a
no, no. I think
no. I've got a unique perspective on that because what Ozzy did is exactly what my coach here at Alfred did, the same way. So I've got things to share with you, but you'll have
yeah, I
to come
remember you
back.
telling that story. Okay, maybe you should get that one then.
You'll have to come back and see. I'll have to maybe talk to him about it. Actually, I know his story. I've been there before,
Maybe
so
you
I've,
should
I've
just
heard it before.
you should tell both stories next time, and I'll just sit here.
I love that because, as you know, it is my podcast. I just invite you on as like a guest.
Yeah, I mean, I could just sit here and
Yeah, you
chime in
sit.
at the end with pointless comments.
Yeah, you sit there, and we've got Connor number 2 in the background there who can help us out. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well,
For
he
those of
won't
you who
be he won't be here next time.
That's what you think. I'm gonna screen grab it, and it's gonna be my background tomorrow next. Make sure you're following us on social media too: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I'm trying my best to keep up with those. It is getting tougher with my schedule being the way it is, but we've been all right with it. TikTok's been a little slow, but we'll get back to it. But make sure you subscribe and interact with us there because that's really what we're here for. So thanks so much for listening, everybody, and we will see you next time on the next episode of MLS History Retold.